Hello everyone. Love across 1,000 kilometers. CEO James finally returns, and in that moment of reunion, tears become the language of love. In the embrace of Diep and James's mother, happiness blooms again, fragile yet powerful. In tears, faith is reborn. James and Diep have each other once more after being torn apart by distance, proving that true love survives every storm. The first drops of rain fell gently on the old tiled roof as Diep held little Nie close to her side. The morning had been long and tiring. She had woken Nie up early, tied bundles of meat into her basket, and walked to the market. There, beneath the canvas roofs and the noisy bargaining voices, Diep's voice rose softly as she called out to sell her smoked pork. The small girl clutched her hand, curious and obedient, her eyes wide as she watched people come and go. For Diep, this was life, hard, fragile, yet filled with fleeting moments of warmth. When a stranger stopped to smile, or when a neighbor insisted on paying more than the price, simply to help her. That afternoon, after the last pieces of meat were sold and the coins carefully tucked away, Diep took Nie by the hand and walked to the quiet house of James' mother. The house stood waiting, a little lonely under the drizzle, but when the door opened, warmth spilled out at once. James' mother welcomed them in with eyes that lit up at the sight of the little girl. "How precious she is," the woman whispered, stroking Nie's hair. The child sat beside her, answering with shy nods when asked if she liked school, if she was happy with Diep. Diep went to the kitchen, preparing rice and simple dishes. The scent of stir-fried meat and vegetables soon filled the house. At the table, laughter came easily. James' mother told stories of her son who was far away, burdened by endless work abroad, and Diep listened quietly, her heart aching in silence. Every time James' name was spoken, a faint light stirred within her, a light of longing she did not dare to show. Then, as if fate had chosen that very moment, the phone rang. Diep's hands trembled when she saw the name on the screen, James. She answered, her voice soft, and across the distance of 1,000 kilometers, his voice returned to her, tired, deep, but full of warmth. "Diep," he said, "I am coming home. All the procedures are done. In just a few days, I will be back in Vietnam." The words hung in the air, and suddenly Diep's eyes filled with tears. She could not speak for a moment. Beside her, James' mother leaned closer, whispering, "Let me hear him." When she took the phone, her voice broke, calling her son by name. "James, my son, you are really coming back." And James, though far away, smiled through the line. "Yes, mother. It has been too long. I am coming home to you, to both of you." In that room, under the sound of rain outside, 3 lives were bound together by longing and love. Diep lowered her head, her tears falling silently into her lap. James' mother held Nie in her arms, as if holding on to hope itself. It was not just the return of a son, not only the reunion of 2 hearts across the ocean, it was the rebirth of faith. After months of uncertainty, of whispered prayers, of lonely nights, they finally saw the promise of tomorrow. Diep glanced at the little girl, then at James' mother, and finally at the phone still warm in her hand. Her lips curved into a trembling smile. "He is coming back," she whispered. "No matter the storms, he is truly coming back." And in that moment, happiness was born again in tears. The love that had traveled 1,000 kilometers was returning home, carried on faith, on patience, and on the quiet strength of a woman who had never stopped waiting. Days passed with a nervous sweetness. Diep found herself unable to sleep at night, her thoughts circling endlessly. She would sit by the small wooden table after Nie had fallen asleep, staring at the quiet lamp, imagining James stepping off the plane. She wondered what he would look like after so long away. Would his face show the weariness of endless battles in the corporate world, or would it light up the moment he saw her? James' mother, too, was restless. Every morning she would rise earlier than usual, cleaning corners of the house that were already spotless, preparing extra blankets, checking the rice jars and the spice bottles, as though a perfect home would make her son's return easier. Sometimes she would sigh, touching the framed photograph of James in his business suit, whispering to herself, "He is still my boy, no matter how far he has gone." Finally, the day arrived. The airport was crowded, voices overlapping with the echo of footsteps and rolling luggage. Diep stood among them, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. Nee clutched her hand tightly, curious eyes darting around, not fully understanding the weight of the moment, but sensing its importance. Beside them, James' mother held her cane with one hand and reached for Diep's shoulder with the other. Then, across the hall, a familiar figure appeared, tall, composed, but carrying a heaviness that only those who had lived far too long away from home could bear. James walked forward, his sharp suit softened by the exhaustion in his eyes. For a heartbeat, he seemed like a stranger, a man shaped by distance and responsibility. But then his gaze found Diep, and everything else dissolved. Diep, he breathed, as if her name had been the prayer keeping him alive through all those lonely nights. She did not move at first. Her body froze, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. But Nee tugged her hand, whispering, "Is that Uncle James?" And in that instant, Diep's tears spilled freely. She ran forward, leaving behind hesitation, leaving behind fear. James caught her in his arms. The world blurred around them, the noise of the airport, the curious glances, even the voice announcing flights. All that remained was the warmth of her against his chest, the scent of home in her hair. His arms tightened around her as though he feared she might vanish. "I am here now," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I am home." James' mother reached them slowly, her eyes already wet. When James saw her, he dropped everything. Kneeling to hold her hands, "Mother," he said, his voice hoarse. She touched his face, feeling the lines of fatigue, and smiled through her tears. "My son, you are thinner, but your eyes, they are the same." Together, the three of them, and little Nee, left the airport. On the ride home, James barely let go of Diep's hand, as if afraid it might all turn into a dream. Diep said little, her voice trembling every time she tried, but her eyes spoke the truth, relief, love, and a quiet vow never to let him go again. That night, in the warmth of his childhood home, they shared their first meal together after so many years apart. Diep served rice. James' mother offered dishes she had prepared with care, and James, though a CEO who had dined in luxury across the world, ate with the hunger of a man who had missed the taste of love. Every bite, every laugh, every tear at that table was a reminder happiness had finally returned. But beneath the joy, shadows lingered. James knew the world outside had not forgiven him. Enemies still lurked, waiting for his weakness. The company he had built across borders was still fragile, still under threat. He glanced at Diep, her smile lighting up the room as she tucked food into Nee's bowl, and silently swore, "No matter what storms await, I will not let anything take this away from me again." The days after James' return were filled with moments that felt almost unreal. Every morning, Diep would wake to find James already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sunrise over the village fields. He seemed calmer here, far from the noise of boardrooms and flashing city lights. Sometimes he would smile at her and say, "This is what I dreamed of when I was away. Not the skyscrapers, not the power, just this your face in the morning light." Diep's heart would flutter, though a small ache lingered inside her. She knew too well that life was never as simple as a dream. In the evenings, James would sit with his mother and listen to her stories of the village. Of the days he had missed, Nee would climb into his lap, full of innocent questions. "Uncle James, is it true you live in a house taller than a mountain? Did you ride airplanes every day? Do you eat hamburgers for breakfast?" His laughter filled the house, rich and unguarded, as though the boy inside him had returned. But outside their little circle of happiness, whispers were spreading. The company James had built across borders was crumbling. Rivals circled like vultures. Deals were sabotaged. Investors, once loyal, began withdrawing one by one. And at the heart of it all was a name James had not spoken aloud for years: John. John, the man who had once been his business partner, now a shadowy figure pulling strings from the dark. John knew James was back in Vietnam. He knew about Diep, and he had not forgotten the past, the land, the betrayal, the wound that had never healed. One afternoon, while James was out meeting an old friend in the city, Diep was at the market selling meat as usual. The day had been busy, the sun hot overhead. She was wiping her forehead when she noticed a stranger lingering by her stall. He was well dressed, but his smile was cold. "You must be Diep," the man said casually, picking up a piece of pork and examining it, though he had no intention of buying. "I've heard about you." Diep's hands stilled. Something about his tone unsettled her. "Do I know you?" she asked carefully. The man chuckled. "Not yet, but I know James. Tell him John sends his regards." Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving only the echo of his words. Her heart pounded. That night, when James returned, she told him what had happened. His face darkened instantly. He reached for her hands, his grip firm. "Diep, listen to me. If John is making moves here, it means he wants more than just the company. He wants to hurt me, and that means he might try to hurt you." Fear flickered in her chest, but she lifted her chin. "I'm not afraid. I've waited for you through all those years, James. If storms are coming, then let them come. I will not leave you." For a long moment he just looked at her, as if memorizing her courage. Then he pulled her into his arms, whispering against her hair, "You are my strength. But promise me one thing: if it ever becomes too dangerous, you will protect yourself first. I can fight John, but I can't lose you." Outside, the night was quiet, the sound of crickets filling the air. But in James' heart, a war had already begun. Life often tests us in ways we cannot foresee. The story of James and Diep is not only about distance and reunion, but also about the deeper truths hidden in human hearts. From their journey, one can discover lessons that extend far beyond romance, lessons that touch upon faith, sacrifice, and the strength to endure hardship. The first lesson lies in the power of love that endures distance. James traveled thousands of miles, building his future in a world far from home. Diep remained behind, living a simple life, carrying silent hopes. Yet even across oceans, their bond survived. This reminds us that true affection does not fade with time or distance. It grows stronger when nourished by patience and trust. The second lesson is about resilience in the face of adversity. James' return was not just a return to love, but also to the storm awaiting him: betrayal, collapsing businesses, and the threat of enemies like John. Diep's quiet strength became his shield. In her, we see how an ordinary person, with no wealth or power, can still hold the courage to stand beside someone when the world begins to crumble. Love, in its truest form, is not about sharing only joy, but also about carrying pain together. The third lesson is one of faith. Faith is not only in each other, but in the path they walk. James believed that rebuilding was possible, even when his empire seemed lost. Diep believed that staying beside him was worth the risk. Even when fear whispered otherwise, their faith became the thread that stitched their broken moments back into hope. Finally, their story shows us that happiness does not come from luxury or success alone. It often blooms in the simplest places, A shared meal at the market, laughter with a child, a mother's tearful embrace. These are the treasures that cannot be bought or measured, yet they hold the greatest value. From James and Diep we learn that love is not a fragile dream, but a living force capable of withstanding storms, distance, and even betrayal. And when tears fall, they do not only speak of sorrow. Sometimes they are the birthplace of faith, reminding us that even in pain, joy can be reborn.